I used to think my life was fine, normal even. I worked at a small marketing firm in Portland, Oregon, lived in a tiny apartment cluttered with thrift store furniture, and had a cat named Murphy, who, honestly, was the closest thing to unconditional love I'd ever known. My routine was predictable. Wake up at 6:30 a.m., hit the gym for an hour, shower, breakfast of instant oatmeal, then a 9 to 5 grind with coffee breaks that were more about staring out the window than socializing. Weekends were sacred. I'd grab a latte, scroll through Reddit, maybe binge some crime documentaries, and occasionally meet friends at a dive bar downtown. My family lived in Eugene, about 2 hours away. We'd text regularly, mostly small talk, my mom asking if I was eating properly, my dad joking about my obsession with cats, my younger sister sending memes she thought were funny. Nothing extraordinary, nothing dramatic. I liked it that way. Safe, predictable. But beneath that veneer of stability, I'd always had this gnawing sense that I was somehow disposable. Not in an overtly sadistic way, just that my existence wasn't particularly urgent to anyone else. I brushed it off as insecurity. I had a good job, a cozy apartment, friends I liked, and a cat who thought I was God. It was enough. I told myself it was enough. Then, one Thursday morning, everything cracked. It started with a single phone call. My sister, Julie, her voice tight and strained, asked me to come home immediately. She didn't explain why. She just said, "It's serious. Mom and Dad are upset. You need to come." My stomach dropped. The tone in her voice wasn't panic. It was something worse. Anger, disappointment, accusation barely held behind polite words. I tried to reason with her, asked what was going on, but she hung up mid-sentence. My mind raced through every possible scenario. I hadn't done anything illegal, at least not lately. I hadn't stolen from anyone, cheated, lied. Had I? No. But the way she sounded made me feel like I had. That afternoon, I packed a bag, left Murphy in the care of my neighbor, and drove the 2 hours south. The streets blurred past as dread coiled in my chest like a living thing. I kept thinking about my last visit home. Was there a clue I missed? Something I said? Something I did that crossed a line I didn't even know existed? When I arrived, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and tension. My parents were sitting at the kitchen table, not looking at me. Julie stood by the fridge, arms crossed, jaw tight. My dad finally spoke, voice low but sharp. "We need to talk about what happened at the family gathering last month." I froze. My mind went blank. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. What are you talking about?" I managed to whisper. They exchanged a glance like I wasn't even in the room. That glance, I would remember it for the rest of my life, was filled with certainty that I was guilty of something terrible, something unforgivable. And in that moment, I realized my safe, ordinary life was over. The words that came next cut through me like a jagged blade. My dad, usually calm and quiet, spoke with a voice that made it clear he'd already decided my fate. "Someone accused you. Something. Something serious. We need to know the truth." I blanked. Accused me? Of what? I haven't done anything. My voice cracked. I could feel the panic rising, clawing at my throat. Julie stepped forward, her hands trembling. It's it's hard to explain, but people think you." She paused, glanced at my mom, then swallowed. "They think you took advantage of someone at the gathering, at Emily's party. That's why they're upset." I laughed, nervously, but it came out hollow and uneven. "What? That's insane. I wasn't even..." My words failed me. How could this be happening? I had spent hours helping clean up after that gathering, talking with cousins, making sure everyone had drinks, snacks, making awkward small talk. I hadn't even noticed Emily was upset. But the look on my parents' faces, disbelief mixed with anger, made me feel like I was already condemned. They weren't listening. Their minds were made up before I even opened my mouth. Their love, the same love that had been steady but quiet all my life, suddenly felt conditional, fragile, gone. I tried to defend myself, calling friends who had been there, asking them to confirm what I had done. But their voices didn't reach my parents. "We have to protect the family," my mom said, her eyes wet but unyielding. The next days were a blur. Calls went unanswered, messages ignored. Social media filled with cryptic posts from relatives hinting at disappointment and betrayal. I lost my job, temporarily. Rumors had started to leak to my coworkers. I felt like I was unraveling in slow motion, a puppet whose strings had been cut without warning. I stopped answering the door. I stopped eating properly. Murphy stared at me with those big round eyes, as if sensing the collapse of the world I had built. I'd sit on the couch for hours, scrolling through Reddit and crying quietly, wishing someone, anyone, would just believe me. At night, the thoughts grew darker. I imagined running away, leaving everything behind, starting over in another state under another name. I pictured my parents' faces frozen in horror and disappointment, and part of me hated them, hated Julie, hated the world for letting this happen. I hated myself, too, though I didn't know why. Maybe because I felt powerless. Isolation became my only companion. My friends, unsure how to respond, gradually faded away. The office that once felt routine and safe now felt like a trap filled with whispers and pointed glances. Even Murphy, my little constant, could only comfort me so much. By the end of the month, I barely recognized myself. My reflection in the bathroom mirror was pale, hollow-eyed, lips cracked from biting them too often. I had become a ghost in my own life. And I realized that the world I thought I knew, the family that raised me, the life I built for myself, was gone, burned. By words I didn't speak, accusations I didn't deserve, and a silence that spoke louder than any defense I could muster. For weeks, I existed in a haze of gray. Days blended into nights, and the apartment felt smaller, suffocating. Murphy slept at my feet most of the time, a silent witness to my unraveling. I'd wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, heart hammering, imagining my parents' voices accusing me, imagining Tully's glare like it was burned into my skull. I stopped going out. The gym became too public, too exposing. Grocery runs were quick, mechanical, no interaction beyond a quick thank you to the cashier. I scrolled endlessly through social media, half expecting a viral post about me, half trying to find a story that would reassure me that life didn't always betray people like this. Work, when I managed to drag myself in, was exhausting. My colleagues looked at me differently, their eyes a mix of pity and suspicion. Rumors still circulated. Even though no one had confirmed anything, the weight of judgment pressed down on me like a physical force. I started forgetting things: emails, deadlines, simple tasks. I caught myself staring at walls, thinking about how easy it would be to disappear. Therapy was a slow, uncomfortable step. Sitting in a small office with a stranger, talking about emotions I didn't fully understand, made me feel exposed and weak. But slowly, cautiously, it became a lifeline. I started naming things: anger, grief, betrayal, loneliness. Naming them made them less like monsters hiding under the bed and more like things I could, maybe, manage. I began tiny routines: making my bed every morning, brewing a proper cup of coffee, feeding Murphy without forgetting. I started journaling, scribbling out thoughts before they could fester into panic. Even small victories, like laughing at a dumb meme, finishing a book, cooking something edible, felt monumental. I also returned to work fully, reestablishing some sense of structure. I started exercising again, but this time not to escape life, but to remind myself that my body could still respond, still move, still fight. I made a list of goals that seemed achievable: save a small amount each month, reconnect with one old friend, maybe even leave Portland someday for a fresh start. It wasn't a sudden recovery. There were nights I lay in bed convinced no one would ever believe me, convinced my family's love had evaporated and left a hollow, cold space where it had been. I cried, I raged, I doubted myself, but I survived. Somewhere along the way, I began to feel the first faint stirrings of hope. I wasn't okay, not yet, but I was no longer completely undone. I was still here, still fighting, still breathing. And then, out of nowhere, a message appeared. My phone buzzed with a name I hadn't wanted to see again, Julie. The message from Julie sat on my phone screen like a ticking bomb. I stared at it for hours, finger hovering over read, debating whether to let curiosity destroy the fragile peace I had built. Eventually, I swallowed my dread and opened it. It was short, almost clinical. "We need to talk. It's time you know the truth." My heart dropped, then raced. Was this another setup? Another accusation waiting to shatter me again? But there was something in the phrasing, something unfamiliar, that made me pause. She didn't write, "You did this," or "We're disappointed." She wrote, "The truth." We arranged to meet at a small cafe near my apartment. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to face this alone. The walk there was unbearable. Every step felt like dragging my life behind me on a leash. I rehearsed 1,000 scenarios, denials, anger, forgiveness, but none of them prepared me for what I saw. Julie looked exhausted, older than her years, hollowed by guilt. She avoided my eyes at first, fiddling with her coffee cup, tapping it nervously against the table. Then she took a deep breath and spoke. "I lied about what happened at Emily's party. I made it up. I was angry, jealous, and I didn't think you'd ever forgive me if you knew. But I can't keep living with it on my conscience." I stared at her. The cafe around us faded into a blur. My parents hadn't just doubted me, they had abandoned me based on a lie. My heart pounded in disbelief, then collapsed into rage, sorrow, and relief all at once. You're saying none of it happened?" My voice trembled. "My parents, they believed you?" Julie nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't think they would, and I didn't know how to fix it. But yes, everything. It was a stupid, cruel mistake. And I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry." I wanted to scream. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to hurt her. Every emotion came at once, a storm in my chest I couldn't control. She looked at me, desperate for any sign of forgiveness. "Please, I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed you to know. I needed the truth to come out." I sat back, trembling. I felt a strange combination of vindication and devastation. The truth was finally out, yes, but my family had already abandoned me. My friends had moved on. The life I had tried to rebuild was fragile, and now the person who caused it all was sitting across from me, waiting for an answer I didn't know I had. I realized in that moment that nothing would ever feel the same. Trust had been shattered, love had been conditional, and even with the truth revealed, I was left with a void where certainty, safety, and family should have been. Julie left the cafe, her apology lingering in the air like smoke. I watched her go, heart pounding, wondering if I should run after her, scream, forgive, or shut the door on the past forever. The world felt heavier, quieter, and unbearably sharp. The days after that meeting were surreal. Julie's confession lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. My apartment felt both smaller and larger at the same time, every corner echoing the absence of the family I once relied on. Murphy still curled at my feet, indifferent to the human chaos around him, and for some reason, that felt comforting. I tried calling my parents, leaving messages I never expected them to answer. My voice shook with anger, with hurt, with disbelief. Everything was a lie, I said into the voicemail over and over. And each time, the silence on the other end carved a deeper groove of emptiness into my chest. Work, once a refuge, became another stage for my thoughts to loop endlessly. I caught myself staring out the window for minutes at a time, imagining confrontations I would never have, apologies that would never come, and futures that felt like sand flipping through my fingers. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake, replaying Julie's face, the truth spilling out in her trembling voice, juxtaposed against the long weeks of isolation and betrayal I had endured. But then I remembered the little victories I'd built in the months before. Morning coffee that smelled like warmth, the quiet purring of Murphy on my lap, walks through the park where I could hear the world breathing around me. I realized that despite everything, I had created something that was mine, something small but undeniably real, something worth protecting. And that's when the question hit me, harder than anything else. Could I let them back in? Could I forgive my sister? Could I forgive my parents for abandoning me, for believing a lie, for breaking a bond I thought was unshakable? I didn't know. The rage still simmered just beneath my skin. The hurt, raw and jagged, made the idea of reconciliation feel impossible. And yet, the truth offered a strange, almost painful relief. I wasn't guilty. I hadn't done what they thought. That knowledge alone could have been enough to breathe life back into those fractured relationships. But the trust, the certainty, the feeling of safety, they were gone. Some nights, I imagine a version of myself picking up the phone, calling my parents, telling them to meet me. Some nights, I imagine walking away forever, leaving the past as dust, carrying only the life I had rebuilt for myself. And in the quiet, I know this. There's no right answer, no moment when the decision will be easy, no clear path to healing or closure. I can forgive, I can reconnect, or I can move forward alone. But whichever choice I make, it will carry weight, a weight I'll feel every single day. I still sit with Murphy, still make my coffee, still walk to work, still journal. I still live, even if part of me is trapped in that cafe, staring at my sister, grappling with a truth too heavy to bear, and a future too uncertain to see clearly. For now, the question remains unanswered. And maybe that's how life is supposed to be. Messy, cruel, and strangely beautiful, even in its ambiguity.